Hello and welcome to another installment of Beards and Cars Rivals, and for those who are new to the series, it's where we take two or more vehicles and pit them in a head-to-head showdown, especially with a view to potential ownership, to see which one is the better option for you. But this episode is going to be a little bit different, because these cars are not anywhere near as much direct rivals as most of the other installments that we've done. And we've done some weird ones before, like the XK versus the XF. Of course, you can check that one out. It's already live on the channel. And the XK has been featured extensively in rivals matches against the XFR, against the 5-litre versus the 4.2, even against the Maserati Gran Turismo. But on this occasion, the reason why this question comes up, the reason why I chose to make a video about it, is because this comes up an awful lot in the Jag community, in messages, even in person, people asking me, which one should I go for? Is the F-Type better? Is the XK better? And the reason why I'm skipping past all the usual on-paper specs, for most of the video at least, is because it's not about that. These cars are actually not rivals at all, and the only reason why this is a valid question is because a lot of people do like them both, and consider them to be very similar in terms of which one they might purchase. Beyond that, I would never put these cars head to head because they're just not that compatible. There are so many differences, the physical size, one being all-wheel drive, one being rear-wheel drive, and let's not forget the small fact that one is a GT and one is a sports car, making them completely different categories of machine. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with what the difference is, as a general rule, a GT car is almost like an evolution of a sports car, wherein it's a little bit bigger, typically. It's more designed for longer distance performance and comfort, more of an emphasis on elegance, probably a very nicely styled interior, usually with a 2+2 seat layout, a bit of extra luggage space, and it's more like a south of France kind of car, where you can take it on hundreds of miles, if not more, journeys, and still emerge the other end fresh as a daisy, not like you've jumped in a supercar and had your teeth rattled out of your skull. That is a GT car. And of course, you can tell which one of these cars falls into that category. On the other hand, you have a sports car. A sports car is about the moment. It's about living for the now. The handling, the cornering, the sound, putting a smile on your face. You could use one every day if you wanted to, but it's not really intended for that. Trunk space will probably be less. Interior space doubtless will be. It might have 4 seats, but usually won't. There are some exceptions like the Porsche 911, but it tends to be more purely focused on the weekend tour kind of aspect. And of course, that has F-Type written all over it because there are no 4-seater versions of the F-Type, open top or otherwise. So immediately that raises one point of the 3 that I want you to consider if you are a potential owner within this video. And that first point is size. The size difference between the two cars is drastic in terms of which one will suit you more. For a number of reasons. Trunk space, the XK is superior. Rear space, with those extra 2 seats, well, one of them doesn't have 2 rear seats, so that's pretty much a bygone conclusion. I reckon you could probably drive an XK even in hardtop form of this X150 shape, the aluminium bodied cars that is, probably if you were 6'7", 6'8" maybe. I'm 6'3", I have plenty of space, I don't even have the chair all the way back. I can put the chair so far back in this car in terms of the bottom section sliding backwards that I can barely reach the pedals. That's the kind of space that we're talking about. It's fantastic for driver space. The rear seats are very cramped, so it's really a token that it's a 4-seater, but that tends to be the case more often than not for most 2+2s, with the only real exceptions being stuff like BMW 6 Series or Bentley Continental GTs or maybe a Lister Storm, but apart from those, they're pretty much token seats anyway. But I've used them recently to take a couple of relatives in the back, and they can be used, as uncomfortable as they are. The trunk space, as I said, is superior anyway. I love the hatchback layout on the XK. It gives you just that extra bit of practicality where you can put stuff in the car if you want to onto the back seats through the back. And it also has more of an open plan trunk where it's wider, deeper and flatter. So you can load in bags more easily than, for instance, a tiny little trunk, which a more typical sports car, for example, would have. So in terms of driver space, rear passenger space, if at all, trunk space, the physical proportions of the vehicle even, that is a massive difference between the two cars. If you're a bigger driver, I would pretty much always recommend checking out the XK first. if not only, compared to the F-Type, to be honest. Secondly, and this is directly tied into the size, but also very much so the drivetrain in particular, and this is the one biggest envy I have about the F-Type as an XK owner myself, that is the feel. The driving feel is very different on these two cars, and it's another huge factor as to which one is going to be better for you. Now, if you are a little bit younger, I think you may well enjoy the F-Type more, because as far as younger drivers go, I know that I am more the exception than the rule. I tend to like older gents kind of cars. I mean, I drive an XK, so I like that kind of relaxed super cruiser vibe. The F-Type is much more playful. It barks a lot more with that V6 engine. It has, as I said, the more compact layout. It loves cornering. It loves launching off the line with, here's the crucial thing, that all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is a huge difference, and in some ways a huge advantage for the F-Type. The two key ways that it's an advantage is off-the-line acceleration. It's vastly superior with much less wheel spin, and secondly, all weather. In England, it's not sunny all the time, and if you plan on using the car more than just as a toy, that is an invaluable advantage to have. And to be honest, it's one of the relatively few things about my XK which I wish was different. I honestly do wish it was an all-wheel drive car. Even if it was only part-time, it would make such a difference to, for instance, its wet weather capabilities. It's not scary to drive in the rain per se, but you certainly can't get the best out of it, and something with all-wheel drive is simply more sure-footed. Compare it to, for instance, the Nissan GTRs that I've reviewed, the Panamera, etc. It's just such a huge advantage in countries like England. So really that second point comes down to what kind of driving experience you want. Do you want something that's just going to be a toy? If you are only going to use either of these cars as a weekend toy or a summer toy and store it the rest of the time, then the F-Type may even be the one for you. However, if you plan to use it, as I do for example, as my daily driver, well, I don't think I'd daily an F-Type. Regardless of whether I could, the XK is simply more adept at that. Bigger, more space, all the aforementioned stuff, it just lends itself to that more. The third thing is the purpose. Now this one encapsulates everything else and puts it all together. The fact that one is a pure sports car and the fact that one is a GT just set them worlds apart. So if you consider all the points that I already made and combine them, that purpose, I believe at least, becomes fairly clear as to which car is better for what kind of driver. In terms of used values, where you can find one on the market, in terms of value for money, affordability, well, the XK has a massive advantage there, because if you're willing to go down to the 300 horsepower model, the 4.2, well, you can get one for like 7 or 8 grand. It will be slightly higher mileage, but it can be done. You can pay up to close to 50 for a super low mileage, say 5 litre active R model, which is relatively late in the run. And occasionally you can pay even higher, if you find like an XK RS GT or something with hyper low miles. But even just talking normal XKs and XKRs, you should be looking at in the region of like 7 to 25 grand. So it's a fairly broad swath, but you can get a lot of great stuff in there, including mine, the XKR 4.2. However, with the F-Type, that's basically where you start. You're not going to find one that often, even in the UK, in its homeland, for less than 24-25 grand. And that's for the V6 with about 335 horsepower. So it's much more close to like Aston values. You could get an Aston DB7 or a Vantage literally for that money. And occasionally you'll see something like an Audi R8 for barely more. So it's a lot more competitive, in my opinion. One of the things that I love so much about the XKR is that it doesn't really have any rivals. There's nothing on that level of exotic that's anywhere near to that price. And the only other cars that are close are stuff like, BMW 6 Series, which just don't have the panache of a Jag XKR. They're great in many ways, but it's just not the same kind of machine. You could get like a written off Aston maybe and fix it up yourself, but that's about it. In the 25 grand category, well, you're talking pretty competitive now. You could get a used Corvette, you could get a decent 911, for example, like a Carrera of a slightly older shape. It's much more competitive. If you can afford either of them, then of course take all the points that I mentioned into account and compare them. From my experience, there was never any question which one I was going to buy. It was always the XKR, and that never changed. I've never looked back, I've never thought, oh, I wish I could have an F-Type, I wish I'd bought an F-Type. Not once, to be honest. And it is a lovely car, and there are some fantastic options. Some of the fuel economy is superior, the performance is unarguably superior on the F-Type, and that is, as I said, an unarguable point. It's way faster, and part of the reason why is, once again, the all-wheel drive. You can just get the power down more and launch off the line. So in terms of certain aspects of its performance, the F-Type is the leader of the two, without question. And in other ways, the XK is the leader of the two. So deciding which one's best for you, I believe you should look at a lot of the points that I've mentioned here, and then you'll be able to, I believe, fairly quickly decide which one falls into your kind of purpose more. If you're just looking for a toy, if you're just looking for performance and fun and good weather kind of driving, the F-Type sounds like it's more your thing. If you want the more elegant, almost daily kind of vibe with extra space, extra comfort, extra basically elegance and presence, then the XK is probably the car for you. And of course, in terms of looks and sound, it always comes down to personal preference. In terms of interior design as well, I happen to think they both look great inside and out. Overall though, that's it for my thoughts. Tell me yours down below. I know some of you will have probably owned versions of both of these, so give me your comparative thoughts. Which one did you prefer? Which one maybe did you stick with? Maybe you have owned them both in the past and have some warnings, for example, for potential owners in the future. Drop all of that down below, and of course stick around on the channel for more Rivals matches, and be sure to click here on screen to see the other matches that I've already done as well. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.